One of these countries during a recent G7 meeting dared to suggest applying sanctions to Brazil without even consulting with or hearing Brazil. I thank those countries that did not accept to go ahead with this absurd.
Okay, so Bolsonaro is addressing the UN General Assembly, and his message so far is that he reminded everybody that Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, and Lula da Silva are really bad guys, and that he basically saved Latin America from the communism that Fidel started in the 60s. So that was like the way he opened up. And then he went on to say that he has somebody from the indigenous groups in the Amazon that is going to talk to everybody about what is happening in the Amazon, but without complaining to the global community for giving a damn about the Amazon, because it is not true that it is the lung of the world. And that we were very rude at offering any kind of help or getting any kind of pressure of any kind, because we were invading their sovereignty and we were being colonial assholes, basically. That's what he said. I have no position here, okay? So that's exactly what he said. And, okay, so let me continue watching.
In particular, I thank President Donald Trump, who very aptly summarized the spirit that should prevail among the United Nations member countries.
Oh shit. And then he goes on and says that Donald Trump is an example of how everybody should be behaving nowadays. So I mean, we will continue watching.
For the freedom and the sovereignty of each of us as nations. Currently, 14% of Brazilian territory are demarcated officially as indigenous lands. But one must understand that our natives...
14%? Are you kidding me? Seriously? 14% or 40%? He's saying something about that I understood that it's 14%. So he's basically saying that the voice of one indigenous group does not represent the group of voice of all indigenous people. That which is the case of one. I guess he's trying to validate the person that's going to talk to everybody, which is a chief. So he's saying that within the cultures or within the indigenous groups, everybody is their own chief and they have their own different views and they're not all agreeing on the same thing. Now it's weird. He's reading a letter from... I'm so confused. I don't know, man. Like... I'm so confused right now about everything, like about the environment and work and life. It's just weird because, okay, so apparently there are things that are super pressing. Like literally the way they're painting it is that we are on the last stroke of like global warming. And we can either do something or think that they're exaggerating and not do anything. But if we don't, let's say if we do something changes and we get a little bit more chance, and let's say we are not at the brink of extinction, but that we are trying to be sustainable with our environment, like give and take at a proportional rate, and so than everything else that lives in this world. Um, so if we do something and then we're not at the threat anymore, well, then that means that maybe it was right. But do we really want to be the people that say, oh no, it's an exaggeration? And then let's say that you're right. It doesn't hurt to do the good thing. Like, it doesn't hurt to try to start worrying about it, because eventually maybe you're right. Maybe it's not pressing, maybe it's an exaggeration. But it could happen also that eventually, maybe not this year, or like they're saying, maybe not this, like 2022, like, no, like not the next election. Like, we still have time to fix it. And I think that if we don't do anything, we're just basically saying, like, I'm stubborn of not doing anything, because it is not true. So that's the thing, that even if it's not true, it is a good thing to do, to think about what you do, what you create, and how is it in the wheel. I mean, is it something that can be, sustainable, reused? It's of value and not of waste. Like, and I think that is a little depressing, because we are at a point where, unfortunately, we are a little bit too spoiled. Like, honestly, we would go through hardship of living like, I don't know, the 1920s, or like even early, like I would say 1920s, because I think that's a time enough that we can still remember, how it was, as far as like history. Because like before, really, like we just know what is on the books, right? We don't know exactly what happened, especially back then, because now we're gonna know, because there's gonna be videos and everything. It's gonna stay for the future. But imagine, like, when there was absolutely no media, no, at least no print media. We have only books and novels and all those things portraying the times, but really everything is subject to interpretation, the filling the blanks. So I guess photographs started filling the blanks, but still, anyways, I'm going away from this. Yeah, that I'm conflicted in that regards about, okay, so what do we do? Like, what are these people, it seems like it's been a very active time for international summits about talking about different things that have concern now, like peace, like I keep hearing sovereignty. I keep hearing human rights. It's such a important time, because I think what these people are saying is the public has gotten out of control. Like, I think that we are out of control as far as we care what happens in the world. And I think we, as people, from individual, like user and user of this government or of this way of life, now I feel like through the social media, I can know more about what happens to my fellow men and women everywhere, and how unjust sometimes things are. And the truth is that it's not doesn't you don't have to be flying to the other side of the world to see really discrepancies within how people live, and how people suffer on a daily basis. And even though there's no crown in suffering, and you would say that, sometimes it depends. Something that I consider suffering may not be suffering for the person that I think he's suffering. So it's like a reflection. So it really is my suffering. But it's I think these governments are being like afraid of like people and organizations that are not governed by international agreements such as non-intervention. I understand, to come and to think that you have a say onto what goes into my country and to what I'm trying to do for the people. And I think in that sense, Bolsonaro is right. And I honestly, when I hear him, I mean, it's just a couple of things. Like, one, that he's there. He's been overly criticized, Bolsonaro. He's portrayed as a demon. I think him and Donald Trump and this the Prime Minister of the UK are being murdered by the media everywhere, because they are, I feel like, of the same wing, which they actually don't see the problem, because the way they're looking at it is the way that they have been brought up. That is the school they have, and the school they have taught them and gave them a response for every argument that you may have that something outside that paradigm cannot work. And they're not able to see the own failures of their own system, because the description of the system has flaws. I mean, all these people that have studied economics go on and make models and theories and theoretic assumptions and models economy, make predictions, and actually alter our end user life because of the predictions or of the measurements that they made. Which, I mean, not because they're fake, but because what I'm going to say, everybody has to go with the assumption that, I mean, models cannot account for so many things that actually happen in our day-to-day interactions. So they can at best predict what would happen if everything remained equal, and then only these variables would change. What would be the impact on unemployment? What would be the impact on GDP? What would be the impact on all this? So these economic models, they do that. I mean, it's not like one day they're gonna be like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know you didn't account for, for shit to happen on this model. I mean, why didn't you tell us before? And then that's not true. Like, we all know that we have to make that assumption, and that's why being married to an economic model, it is like literally being married to a fantasy. The same way if we were married to communism or Marxism from the book, and then from the book, imagine everything that has changed. And taking into consideration that it was diluted and it was misapplied, and it was never, it was always meant to be a base, just like any other um, like capitalism or any other models, that there's been different models. Mercantilism, I mean, it's not like we, the ones that are alive today, yes, that's all we know, but humanity as a whole, there's been other ways and there's been change, and I see that all these, specifically these countries that are being scrutinized by the public, are being very open about, people, what from the world, what are you doing? It's like not even with the country, because this guy loves Trump, obviously. It's not even with the country anymore. It's like you and you, sir. What the heck are you giving these people, the indigenous people? Because I know the campaign that was running, that they won, and they went to court with the government to protect the Amazonian forest. And he's basically saying, we gave the indigenous people that gave him hell a voice, and he's upset, and he doesn't want that, and he wants to bring about the Bolsonaro, the that everybody check everybody on sovereignty, that check your people, because you people been crazy. That's exactly what I think is right. Anyways, so I will continue watching, and then I will do more comments. But yeah, so in general, I was all of this, of my depression, of like I'm confused and all that, was because I've been very interested lately. There was a peace summit here in Merida, and I followed it a little bit, and I've been following the Democratic pre-campaign, and then I've been following the some of the Mexico president's addresses, and I think it was it's been a lot of questions for me, as far as like how far can the government really take us, and where do we step in, and like where is it that it belongs to me, my own happiness and my own well-being? Where do I stop asking for the government to solve my problems and say, okay, government, I think we cool. I think if you can take care of this and you can take care of it well, and you can guarantee this, and that we have a system that we all hold accountable, etc. I think if you can do that, then that's cool. I'm gonna do my thing, and don't come to my thing. So I think that that's what I've been thinking more and more as I continue listening, and not only listening to, let's say, the president or the candidates, but I've been digging into the like the comments, and of course the trolling. I love trolling, but some of them are really informative. Like, one of the things that I find it amazing is I've had doubts of or questions, and then I've commented on the post, and I've gotten answers that have actually helped. Like they've actually say oh, okay, I can see it a little bit. Because, for example, I was thinking about okay, let's say that there's universal healthcare. In theory, Mexico has universal healthcare, but it has been neglected for many years. So what what can we learn from places like, for example, like Canada and the UK, that even though they are at the forefront of this capitalistic countries, which, I mean, let's be real, they're I don't know, they're just basically, I mean, capitalists. Yes, I guess you could say capitalists. Okay, so they are in these countries, and like what is the example of these countries to, let's say, America, if they go to universal healthcare, and how could a country of Mexico also have a vision of how it could be? Because right now, I think that there's a lot of hurt over things that, for example, people thought they were the right to have, let's say, insurance for, like, outside the medical coverage that every citizen has, or that the workers for the state have. And I understand, because people, if I would have had this benefit at some point, I would have been like, yeah, this is my right. I have the right to be healthy, and I have the right for my employer to cover this for me. It is, I agree, I completely agree, right? So I would absolutely take it as I deserve this, and I'm worth this. And so whenever you take out something like that, it's like you are basically taking a token of worth. And I think we have to come to an agreement where, I mean, yes, there are people that are way more important than probably that, you know, do more than others. And also, I think that those are the people that will tell us that no life is worth more or less than any other life. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter what you can list at the end of the days of what you do or how you impact the world, the people that do that kind of impact, and they're aware of it in the way that they want to do it, not that they affect the world and they're just like, I'm just in the wave of attention. No, like they actually set themselves to make a change. I think those people are the ones that will tell us that no life it's more important, and that, for example, a functionary or like somebody that serves the state shouldn't have additional insurance because their life is not worth more or less, for that matter, than the regular people. And right now, what I was saying about the current state of health and the health industry, or the health institution in Mexico, is that one where it was neglected for so long that it opened the way for private insurance to come to Mexico and do the same thing or worse than they're doing in the United States. And that now, because the president has removed such given bonus or additionals to the employees of the state, there's a backlash. Of course, because the healthcare system, it is so broken that of course nobody trusts them. But this is a matter of learning the lessons from countries that have universal healthcare and that is running, and that it should be the work of the people in government to be the first ones to acknowledge that their life is no more important than our life and that everybody's life. because it doesn't make any sense to do that separation of us and them, because it should be us all the way. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things within Mexico, within the United States, if the universal healthcare reform in the United States is going to happen, and it's going to continue to happen. How is it going to happen? It is very hard to predict because of all the interest and all the money that is in insurance. And I could see the same argument being implemented in Mexico, especially because insurances in Mexico are operating without without such strict parameters to operate and to provide the service. So the prices are continuing to going up, and I think the solution is not to continue to open the door for insurance companies to come to Mexico to exploit the people and to profit from the healthcare of the people, from their rights, from a right that we all have, which is the right to live a healthy life. And I think we should all work together, the United States and Mexico and our respective countries individually, to acknowledge that this is not a matter of who has more, of who deserves more. This is a matter of this is the right thing to do, and etc. So I will be looking into that because it is going to be messy. If Bernie Sanders is even able to do anything like the way he's wanting to do, or Elizabeth Warren for that matter, there's gotta be a lot of information, a lot of things that we all have to jump into the wagon. Just like we all have to jump into the wagon of cleaning up the government in Mexico, we all have to jump into the wagon in the United States to fight the money that is behind the obstruction of our rights. And I do believe that it can be done. I think it's gonna be messy. I think it does require the 1% to be taxed accordingly, and I acknowledge that they're not gonna like it. And I acknowledge that there's a lot of challenges, such as the jobs and the industry that the healthcare and the insurances support and to not forget those people. It's important, but also it is the job of those people to not fight against it, rather to trust and to have a voice into the whole process, so that they're not forgotten, and that we can as a society account for repurposing and for properly transitioning into a new system of healthcare. And in the case of Mexico about healthcare, of course, there's a lot of things that need to be done. Things have started to be moved. Currently, the president has been for months now visiting rural hospitals all around the country to really see the idea of what is going on and what is needed. And I think this is unprecedented, and I think we should be thankful that somebody is taking the time and effort to really assess, not as he said or she said, but really get immersed into the reality that our country and there are people, not the people in the city and not the people that are well off, but the people that construct the majority of our country in Mexico, the ones that are forgotten, the ones that are lagging because of the years of neoliberal rule, and how they have been rezagados in all aspects. I think we as a country and as a society and as brothers and sisters, we should be looking out for them, because we forgot about them in our quest for development and for success, and it is now our job to support them and to bridge the gap. So That's what I would say. And I think the UN Assembly, and I missed a lot, and I will continue talking about it maybe in the future days and as we move forward. And I'll talk about the address from Trump in a little bit. But these forums are maybe not a lot of action is taken, but we do, if we are able to study it and then to really inform, it does give us a notion of where we are as the world, okay? Because one thing is our sovereign country, and the other thing is how we are ruling how are we presenting ourselves as humans. So I think that that we should pay more attention to things that are happening that are not on the media, and that it should be our responsibility to see where we are and see how we're doing, and do our own assessments. Because what is currently happening is we have two different currents. We have the current where there's a traditional media where there's an agenda behind, and there's interest behind, so the misinformation, it is prevalent in both countries, which I can talk about, America and Mexico. They're the same. Traditional media is either it covers what it can cover and what and how they want to cover it. And then we have the informal medias that now are gaining a lot of power, which is the social networking, but also that opens the door for fake news and for a million different opinions on a subject. So we still have to be able to discern on our own what is aligned with our values, and take facts, yes, but also take into account our responsibility to be informed directly, and not by if we read something, and it happens to me all the time where I read something and I'm like, well, that doesn't sound very good, let me look it up. And then so to try to go as deep as we can onto the source of the news and really hear it for yourself. And then a lot of times you can see that, number one, if it's a social network, they do it for the likes and they do it for the clicks, and that is true. And if it's a traditional media news, it will be tainted with personal interest for the media network, or for journalistic purposes even. I mean, let me not get started on journalists that take advantage of X or Y, and then they portray always the opposition or opposing something will sell. But these people are irresponsible as well, because they are not saying the whole truth in a neutral and partial way. They are tainting it with their own bias and object and subject to what they want to see, and usually is who's paying for their salaries. And then we have to question, we have to have, as society, if we have learned something from the UN and these, at least these two people that I heard, which are Bolsonaro and Donald Trump so far, what we can learn is that they are afraid of the social network and the social media, because it gives the people power, and because they have seen how this power can take even the strongest of governments, and they can bend it. So if we can get anything out of it, is that we have power now individually from the comfort of our phones and from the comfort of our computers. But with power comes what? And it's our job to have that responsibility. Okay, so I could talk more, but I will leave it for another time. And then we'll go over in next to talk about Donald Trump and his address as well. Okay, before I forget, I also watched the one for Trump, and the General Assembly that he addressed everybody, and it's the same day that Nancy Pelosi said, "Okay, biatch, now you're, I told you many times, and you keep doing the same thing, so we're gonna impeach. We're gonna start the inquiry for impeachment." I don't know, man. It's just like, okay. So, for me, the fact that these people went on, it's important, because it's a tradition, and even though we might argue like what the UN and we are independent countries and we don't respond to anybody, it is a table of different opinions, different challenges that governments might be all undertaking. It looks like a lot of what is happening is also like at this level, the media, it's being mentioned as a challenge. This, I think, like social media, like the way they uncontrolled media. And anyway, so he was decent to my extent. I think that it made me think about. I mean, because sometimes I've seen him, but it's usually, I would say, in a different context. So right now I was watching this, I'm following the General Assembly, and I'm not literally following him. So it is, since I wanted to see different positions or to hear different countries speak about their position on the topic, I was very neutral. So even when Bolsonaro came about, I mean, I know I was laughing and everything, but it's, like they make sense on their own way, and I think that overall, like I said, they think they're doing the right thing, but also they don't control all the other people that take whatever they do and interpret in whatever it is and take action. So into the the day-to-day, where a lot of the movements about justice, social justice, have initiated. And I think that I don't know, this guy, it's also, I feel like the United States keeping the UN, going to the UN, I would even say that setting the agenda in some way, because I mean, if we think about it, whether we like it or not, it is the most powerful country in the world. So I think it's clear that, okay, fine, they have a clown for a president, but let's not forget that America is still the most powerful country in the world. That we have all been feeling the thing with the Chinese, and then, I mean, if you think about it, it's also right, because China always wants to, I mean, he doesn't want to move as well, and then they both don't want to move, so who's going to move? And that's gonna be a precedent for anything else that happens. So I mean, he says that he's open to the Chinese, open to communication and to new friendship. But I mean, are they gonna move? No. What is it that they want? So I don't know. I guess I have to check into the Chinese deals, information, of course. A little short in there. And then setting up again as Bolsonaro. So I'm curious who was first. I think probably Trump was first. No? Let me check. Because at first it was Bolsonaro, and then it was Trump. Oh, so burnt him. And it was surprising that like he had specific talking points. I guess they're of international pressure importance. And okay, and then so this is a little bit of a questioning that I'm having. And so they're all these against socialist rule, right? But like the way they portray both of them, Bolsonaro and the United States, it was like, ew, it's horrible. It won't work. Like, yo, it doesn't work. Don't even try. Why are you even trying it? Like, I already told you that it's not going to work. We already know that it's not going to work. So, I really don't go there. Yet, I think that both countries have socialist aspects to it. I mean, things like, not socialist, but we all know, I mean, we've been re-educated about that. There's always not a this cup or this cup. It's just that we have to adapt. And then there are certain things that, for example, what we were talking about with democratic socialism, and why the re-education or the education really has been important, because it makes more sense than one thing or the other thing. It's like, why is it possible to not do not agree 100% with this, and then do not agree 100% with this, and then just agree on core stuff or core issues or core things that we can actually agree on things and develop our relationships through that, instead of trying to convince people or trying to convince nations. So I don't know, like so in that scenario, right, you would consider that, and this is like the question, like, this should be proof enough that there currently nobody's worried about Manuel Lopez Obrador. To the contrary, that he has not been associated with any communist current internationally, and that if we talk about the international arena and what the UN General Assembly means, and the fact that the United States is still there, the UK is still there, I mean, that it's still a culture of cooperation internationally, that no matter what it is, their position or their public discontent of, like, people like us that are being scared to talk, to be concerned about certain things right now, because why? So I think that being sorry, I think that should be like proof enough for all of us Mexicans to know that, like, we should, if Donald Trump, or like if Bolsonaro, if the UK, if U.S. allies are not worried about Mexico being under communist rules, then we shouldn't be worried at all. So I like that. I did like that. Of course, then begs to question, other things. But as far as finding proof that this is not how communism looks like, then I guess we got proof. Bye. Good night.